Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with another edition of STS Radio. We'll start off this show the same way that we start off every show, giving big thanks out to my big buddy Mark, DJ JOD over there on Twitter, the board operator of Sports Radio 970 in Stockton and Modesto, host of the good old Wake Up Show. Everybody knows, if there wasn't for Mark giving me a spot on his online radio station, we wouldn't be doing STS Radio. So big thanks to him. I think everybody out there has gotten used to the format of the show, basically with STS Radio. We're just going to basically sit back for hopefully about the next hour, just talking pro wrestling. I think that's what everybody's here for. And we're going to have a ton of fun. I mean, basically, I think last week's show we spent a good a bit of time talking about the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view, just basically, saying with Dean Ambrose having to face John Cena in a contract and a pole match, more than likely in one of the opening matches of the show, leading to the winner going on to face Seth Rollins. It honestly wasn't looking like that great of a show. But then Monday, out of the middle of nowhere, WWE just sort of reflipped the script, and it seems like everything that they were doing was thrown out the window. It's almost like, when Rock came back 2 weeks ago and had that promo against Rusev, that big surprise was like a big breath of fresh air to WWE. And I know that a lot of the matches haven't changed. A lot of things are still basically the way they are. But they're putting together what looks like to be a good wrestling show. If I can quote myself, I thought that last month people were definitely going to watch the Hell in a Cell 2014 pay-per-view on the WWE Network. But I think that I said that people were mostly just going to be watching this show just because it's on. And I mean, what else are you going to do when a WWE pay-per-view is on? You're going to watch it no matter, if you got a big match on there or not. It's WWE pay-per-view. It's wrestling on a Sunday night. I know that they have, this is going up against, it just slipped my mind. I know this week is going to be the Niners and Broncos on Sunday Night Football, and Hell in the Cell is going to be in the next slot. But I mean, there's football and there's wrestling. If you're not doing one of those things, I don't know what you're doing in the world, basically. But now it's setting up. I'm going to call Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins in a Hell in the Cell match. I'm going to call that match the main event. You also have John Cena and Randy Orton appearing in their 29th match on WWE pay-per-view in the history of their, rivalry that is going strong. They're going to have a Hell in the Cell match. You got Big Show going up against Rusev. Sheamus is having a match for United States Championship against The Miz. And Brie and Nikki Bella is having a singles match where the loser becomes the winner's personal assistant. Honestly, you're probably going to get the Dust Brothers going up against the Usos in a tag match. And probably there's going to be one more match out there sort of name. Maybe Mark Henry and Bo Dallas can limp into the pay-per-view with one more match. But this is a good, honest, respectable wrestling show. This is going to be really fun. Ambrose and Rollins going to be main eventing their first show. I think it's one of the rivalries that's most strong in the WWE. I think that basically if they didn't take a month off from Dean Ambrose, from him to go out and make that movie. I think that's something that I've looked at in the past. When wrestlers go off and make the movies, that it's going to make them a bigger star. I remember, John Cena got to go do it, and after that, he went to Mr. Anderson, Ken Kennedy. When he was in WWE, he went off and made that, war flick. I thought that was going to make him a main eventer, and I didn't learn from that. The Marine 2 went to Ted DiBiase, and I kept waiting for that. As that DVD was coming closer, I kept on thinking, well, they put him in a movie. It was a good featured role. Definitely, it's going to be something that they're going to make him a main eventer to make him seem like it's a big deal. Why else would you give this mid-carder that's never been to the top before? Why would you give him this big movie spot? And it never came, and it never happened. Of course, Ted DiBiase is out of WWE now. He's sitting at home. He left to become a father. There's been rumors a couple times about him popping up in TNA and popping up in WWE, and nothing's ever came of it since. But I don't know. I'm hoping that this movie role for Dean Ambrose is going to pay off with him, becoming a big star. But honestly, I think if Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins would have had a rematch from SummerSlam at the Night of Champions, I think that there would be a little bit more fuel dumped on the fire for this Hell in the Cell match. and they do have a little bit of catching up to do. I think everybody knows that Ambrose versus Rollins is a blood feud, basically with Seth Rollins giving the curb stomp to Dean Ambrose on Monday Night Raw, on top of those cinder blocks, basically squishing his brains out all over the floor. That basically, Ambrose really wants to get back at him for breaking up the Shield. That was a group that could have ran WWE for the foreseeable future, and Seth Rollins put his future above everybody else's, and sort of wants to make sure that he's going to rise to the top. I guess you can say it's paid off, in the short run, with him winning the Money in the Bank, and then you got to think, well, now he's got this Money in the Bank briefcase, which holds the contract where he can cash in at any time, and maybe they should have ran some sort of a storyline. You had basically Dean Ambrose steal it, and then he basically just gave it right back. He didn't ask for any demands. He didn't, they used that to sort of make sure that the Hell in a Cell match was going to happen. Everybody just sort of came out and said, "Hey, give it back," and he gave it to him. Of course, it was fooled with the Nickelodeon gack, which squirted all over him in the middle of the ring. And I don't know, it was fun. It was a good moment that we might remember for a good foreseeable future. But they could have done more, and it could have been bigger and better. But then again, uh, John Cena didn't have an opponent, so you had to be sort of keeping him in the loop to make him look like he's a big time main eventer. And honestly, I think this is what the John Cena versus Randy Orton match really is. You got to think if they're gonna have a Hell in the Cell match with no build. I know that the Hell in the Cell is going to be at Monday Night Raw on Monday, and basically when you can look back at the Hell in the Cell for 2009, when Cena and Orton met, basically that's all that they needed to set the table for that match. Was just 1 week. They were out there and the cell dropped on them, and they had a battle inside of the Hell in the Cell, and that's basically what led to them having a Hell in the Cell match at the Hell in the Cell 2009 pay-per-view, which is one segment on Monday Night Raw. Everybody knew that these guys didn't like each other. Of course, with the John Cena's Greatest Rivalry DVD, I'm hoping everybody went out and picked that up at Best Buy or Walmart or Amazon.com. But maybe that's what they're thinking is going to help push this match, is noticing that these guys have fought a lot over the history of their career. They've never really been on the same page. Maybe if you look back in the history of WWE 2010, 2011, maybe you'll see sometimes that Cena and Orton tagged up. I don't think anybody ever really liked it, but I think it's happened a few times here or there on Raw. But I don't think these guys have ever been friends. What doesn't make sense to me is there is no stipulation other than the Hell in the Cell match. Nobody's asking for a title shot. Nobody's asking for a match against Seth Rollins. Nobody's asking for the loser gets fired. The loser has to appear on SmackDown exclusively. Anything would help this match get a little bit more attention and a little bit more praise. Everybody else is just sort of looking at this match like it is what it is. I remember these guys, drew their cards where they were going to have the match after the Survivor Series last year. Cena came out there and sort of put it on the table. Let's unify these belts. I'm tired of running around with this one. You're running around with that one. So TLC, they had the TLC match. And everybody crapped all over it. They always bring up the fact that 2007, I think it was, somewhere around there, they said they were going to have a match, and it was going to be the last time these guys ever faced off on WWE pay-per-view, or even had a match in general, I think. But here they are again. I thought that you put these two guys in the ring. You're gonna get a good match regardless. I'm not the biggest Orton fan in the world, but they're big time veterans and they're big stars for a reason. It doesn't matter if these guys have wrestled 29 times on pay-per-view. They're gonna get in there. They're gonna get it done. I thought the TLC match at the pay-per-view, I thought that was a good match to unify the championship. Of course, Orton picked up the win with the Authority looking on. John Cena was all tied up in the ropes, and he wasn't able to climb up the ladder and make the save, even though he had the brute force to break the ropes down. From there, we go on to Brie Bella versus Nikki Bella. That's going to be the singles match. The loser will become the winner's personal assistant. Kind of weird. Not this week, but last week it was. Was it this? I can't remember when it was. Let's just say Brie Bella beat Nikki Bella on Monday Night Raw. Pinned her clean in the middle of the ring, and now we're still getting this match. It seems like, they came out of Night of Champions. Really, really strong on this. I was really lost at Night of Champions. They had the three-way where Nikki Bella earned herself a championship title shot right before the match. They didn't interview AJ. They didn't interview Paige. They didn't interview Nikki Bella, but they interviewed Brie Bella, and she was spitting venom, basically, saying everything that was wrong with Nikki. And I thought the table was set for her to come down and make sure that she cost her a shot at the championship. And Nikki Bella was in the match, and she got some offense in, but I don't think at any point in that match, Night of Champions, anybody thought Nikki Bella was going to be walking out of there with the title. I think it would have helped WWE a lot of the ways if they would have done the title switch and made Nikki the champion. Of course, she had helped out Stephanie, and she was sort of in the pocket of the Authority at that time, but it could have broken up the AJ versus Paige feud that seems like it's not really going anywhere, and I don't think anybody's really that excited about it. They've done some things the last few weeks on Raw where basically they've broken off their frenemies friendship. Paige is running around with Alicia Fox, and then on Raw, basically, AJ has had to team up with Emma, and she's not getting along with her, and then she teams up with Layla, and Layla turns on her, and even though Layla turned on her, AJ was still able to pick up the victory by pinning Alicia Fox in the match. But it would have, killed the monotony of this match that just doesn't really seem like anybody really cares about. These girls have so much talent in the world, and they just can't get it done for some reason. But they came out of Night of Champions really strong, of course, with the Jerry Springer segment, and the brother coming down, and then the girls, basically all over each other wanting to fight. And then they sort of cooled this off the last 2 weeks. They haven't really let them talk. It's just sort of been set in stone. These girls are going to have a match, and from there we're going to see who the personal assistant is going to be. It doesn't really make sense. I understand they want to keep up a lot of the feuds from Total Divas, but when you're watching Total Divas, some of the girls that have spats during the show, they have matches on Raw. But then when you watch Total Divas and you're looking at the Bellas, these girls are drinking wine together, and they're making sure that their sisterhood is staying strong. They have arguments. They're able to work it out on most like most reality shows. So if the other girls are having to fight on Raw to solve their problems for months in the past, why are the Bellas fighting on Monday Night Raw television when they're able to work through their problems on Total Divas? It doesn't really make sense to me. I'm picking Nikki Bella. There's no way in the world that Brie Bella is going to win, make Nikki Bella her slave, and have it make sense anywhere around the world. I know that they've done things in the past, like with the heel GMs, they have to basically keep their jobs. They become the janitor. They did this with Eric Bischoff having to do weird jobs around the arena in WCW and things like that. But I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to that. Sheamus versus The Miz. This honestly should be a really good match. I have a lot of faith in both of these guys. Sheamus, to me, is a guy that has good matches, but I just never really liked the progression of his storylines that much. But The Miz running around with Mizdow, of course, that would be Damian Sandow, has been gold as of week. Basically everybody knows about Sandow putting the invisible figure four leg lock on the mystery opponent outside of the ring as The Miz was doing it, and we got to see a really great segment on Main Event. It was too bad that this was on Main Event and it wasn't even on SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. Basically, Sheamus coming out, Mizdow coming out acting as Sheamus before, pissing Sheamus off, him come running down, giving the big bro kick, knocking out Sandow, which left Miz just wondering what is going to happen for him in the foreseeable future. Of course, Miz was able to pick up the win over Sheamus on Monday Night Raw, and then of course Miz was able to get a count-out win over Sheamus, both from Sandow's distractions on the outside. Who knows what's going to happen from here at Hell in a Cell? Honestly, if it comes down to it, I'm going to steal this right from the Law, is where I got it from. I'm hoping that more than likely we're going to have Sheamus beat The Miz on at Hell in the Cell. And, of course, they have one of those sort of, right off the bat, right on Monday Night Raw, you get the rematch of what you could have seen on the pay-per-view if you have the WWE Network sort of a deal, where Sheamus comes to the ring to have his match, put the championship up on the line against Miz, and Mizdow stands in for him, wins the title, and then, of course, we have a split of Miz and Damian Sandow going at it over the United States champion, over who is the true champion, because he is a stunt double. That would make, the title his, but Sandow's the guy who won it. And then they can sort of run with that. Sheamus is the guy that can, if he loses this United States Championship, he can wash his hands clean and just walk away, because what is he really doing as United States Champion? He won this on Monday Night Raw, and I can't even really think of who his opponents have been the last, a little bit. I think right off the top of my head, right as I say that, I think he had a match against Cesaro, if I remember right, was pretty good, but nothing really that memorable to be United States Championship matches. And something they need to do needs to bring some sort of a light to this championship where it's being defended. I don't want it hot-shotted around where it's basically, moving back and forth to different people every month, but maybe something like that would make this title not seem stale. It seems like they put it on people. They go on a 6-month title run that doesn't really mean anything. They finally drop it, and then they're all left in obscurity because they haven't been doing anything for the last 6 months, even though they've been champion. From there, we'll go to Big Show versus Rusev, a match that I've given a whole lot of praise to the last few weeks. Of course, we didn't get this match 2 weeks ago because The Rock showing up and just redoing all of the Monday Night Raw script. But Big Show versus Rusev honestly should be a very fun match. Main event last night, you had Rusev going up against Biggie Langston in a very fun match. And I think he's really getting what he's doing. And Big Show is a big guy that can sell for Rusev. We saw that Mark Henry jumped in there on Raw and made sure that he didn't make his good buddy tap out. But if you really pay attention to the Big Show's promos, he's not meaning to, but he's really putting Mark Henry in this place where he just is coming off like he's really letting down the nation of the United States, and he's just not being a good American, and he's going to end up losing his friend. I think that's what everybody's looking forward to happening here. So, those 5 matches, honestly, to me, is looking like a very good card. I'm going to have a lot of fun sitting back, watching this one in 2 weeks, and thinking that it's going to be a ton of fun. That's going to be the Sunday before Halloween, getting you ready. I know a lot of people are looking at the WWE Network, flipping through, Halloween Havoc shows of WCW days, and hopefully they can live up to that sort of a praise. From there, we'll go into talking about TNA. On Sunday, they had their Bound for Glory 2014 pay-per-view. Nothing really big came out of this show, because what can really big come out of this show if you don't really have any of your big guns on hand? I think the one thing that I took from that is there was a guy there, Hama. He had a match against EC3. I want him to get signed by WWE, or I want him to be brought over and featured on TNA Impact Wrestling every week from here on out. Of course, that would be the one big problem with TNA right now, is they've shot all their shows up until the middle of November that there's going to be. And then for some reason, since Spike TV has said they can stay on the network until the end of the year, sort of like a free commercial that they can air, trying to get anybody else with a TV station that would be wanting to sign them. It seems that, for the whole last 2 weeks of November going into the end of December, on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10, you're going to get the best of TNA wrestling. They're not going to be shooting any new shows. There's no plans to do any TNA tapings, because I guess those would cost money. I don't know where the money is going that Spike TV pays on a weekly basis per episode. I don't know if it's the Carters are going to be storing this money up, trying to recoup some of their losses, and then just sort of cash out at the end of the year, or what is going to be going down, because everybody is sort of lost how you can have weeks of television, why Spike TV would have primetime slots where they could be putting anything out there in the world, and it's going to just be reruns of the best matches of TNA. I know a lot of shows, maybe like for the week of Christmas or the week of New Year's, they'll run a sort of a best of the year special. But I'm talking about 4 episodes that are 2 hours long of the best of TNA. Doesn't really make any sense. Maybe you can sort of brand these the best of TNA, and you sort of announce that you're closing, and that's why you're watching these shows to sort of get some closure on things, and maybe like you use each hour block to sort of show the best of that year, where you in every night of the shows you cover 2 years or 3 years of action, showing the progression of the show all the way leading up until whatever you pick to be the last moment. To me, honestly, I wouldn't want to show anything of the last year of TNA. Maybe you end it with AJ Styles, winning the championship for TNA, and defeating the Aces and Eights. I know that wasn't the defeat that really put them out of commission, but I mean, and it got you to that point. You don't need to remember that Mr. Kennedy beat Bully Ray when he came back and he returned. But this show, Bound for Glory, honestly was pretty good. MVP had a match where he won. Samoa Joe and Loki. They stole a little bit of the show in their X Division match. I don't know who fought in that tag team match. I still have no clue. Team 3D seemed to be the MVPs of the night, going into the Hall of Fame, and then having their match against Abyss and Tommy Dreamer, which the crowd in Japan was honestly really hot for. That should have been the main event to them. I know that a lot of people thought that they were going to care about the Great Muta and Tajiri teaming up against Storm and Sonata, but honestly, that Team 3D match was something that they wanted. It was a lot like them getting to see an actual ECW show and getting to channel on and go along with the moves. They were more into that more than anything else on the whole show. TNA in the foreseeable future tonight, on Impact Wrestling, you had the four-way, going after who was going to be the number one contender. It involved Austin Aries, it had Bobby Roode, it had Jeff Hardy, and it had, little dude, Eric Young was in that match. Those, of course, your four biggest baby faces. It was an elimination match in order to get to see who the number one contender to go after Lashley's title would be. I've heard it was a really good match that basically made the whole show very good. It sort of was like that exclamation point on the end of the night. For the last few weeks, Impact Wrestling has been putting on really good shows, but the only problem is no one's been watching. I don't know when this Rude versus Lashley match is going to happen. I think a lot of people already know what's going down. I remember when Lashley had his Bellator fight. It was in early September. He was going up against Josh Burns. And TNA, was a little scared that he was going to be in there, and they set up Lashley versus Rude, which was going to be the first live show after that Bellator event. And I know that at Bellator 130, October 24th, Bobby Lashley's going to be having a match. He's going up against a guy named Carl Etherington. Which is basically his nickname is the Wrecking Machine. He's a little bit of an older fighter. He's 39, but in his pro fighting career, he's 9-0. And this guy is no joke. He's won 4 matches by knockouts. He's won 4 matches by submission, and he's never had a fight go longer than 1 round. He's had fights that have ended in 7, 16, 24, 38, and 15 seconds. This guy knows what he's doing inside of the ring. He's no joke. He's not any kind of a knockoff. Lashley's no joke either. He's 11-2 in his debut. But you can say that he has had some fights that could have gone either way. Lashley versus this dude Etherington coming out of England is definitely something that maybe is the reason why they set up that they're going to take the title off of Lashley. I don't know. There's MMA and there's wrestling. I think there's enough people out there that understand that pro wrestling is pro wrestling and MMA is legit for real until the day somebody finally comes out and says that some stuff has been fixed along the way. But best of luck to Bobby Lashley and what's going down in Bellator. I don't really know. Especially, it's hard to say. I mean, there's if you look at Twitter during the Bound for Glory show on Sunday, honestly, I saw 2 people tweeting about this show as it happened. And these were both loyal TNA people that were really just, just like, let's get this done. Let's have a good show. And they were, really pimping out, how much fun they were having watching the show. But nobody else cared. Everybody was watching football or coming down off their football high from Sunday. And I don't know, it's rough. It's hard to save a company that, keeps on saying we're gonna get a TV deal. The announcement's coming. The announcement's coming, and you just know that there's nothing out there. If there's anything out there, you would see any kind of a rumor. You would have any kind of a foreseeable future about this is going down, and it's not looking good. But the best of luck to him. I was glad that there weren't people out there watching and just tweeting about how bad the show was when basically they haven't been watching Impact and they haven't been following along. So they don't understand the feuds that were going down. But then again, if they would have done anything to help that show, I mean, the story was out there that basically they didn't want to put people in matches at Bound for Glory because it was in Japan, and in Japan holds wrestling in a higher light than it is in the United States. That basically, if the title had changed hands, they didn't want to have him on the show because they didn't want to be looked at as a joke. The women's championship, okay, the Knockouts title, I apologize, and the X Division title are both in that, they're both out there that everybody knows that those titles have changed in the upcoming weeks of Impact. They didn't want to put the World Championship out there because people know that Rude beat Lashley and he's not the champion anymore. And then people know that there was an upset and the Wolves lost the championship, and Storm and Abyss are your new TNA Tag Championships holders. And I don't know. Jeff Hardy had said that he was able to be in Japan for the show. It no longer was his arrest history in his past, a roadblock for this. He could have been there. Bobby Lashley was a star. Robert Roode is a big-time star for TNA. He's been the champion before. And he's the guy that they're trying to push as being the guy who's going to save them in the foreseeable future. By being, the champion. I don't know if they just want to put the championship on Rude because they're closing up shop, and that it's just sort of seems like what they do for guys. AJ Styles got to hold the championship on his way out the door. Chris Sabin was champion before he got to leave. I don't know if this is like TNA's way of saying thank you. We don't have the money to sign you, but maybe this will help your Wikipedia page in the foreseeable future with you getting some bookings, and you can say you were a former TNA World Champion or something like that. But I don't know. Jeff Hardy, Robert Roode, Bobby Lashley, having any kind of a World Heavyweight Championship match on there would have helped them out big time. Eric Young, he was champion within the year. Why he wasn't on this show? It seemed like he's used for a lot of public relations things for TNA. A lot of people know about his reality show, and he seems to be one of the actual biggest stars inside the company, even though he's been a guy who's never wrestled for WWE, and that's how a lot of those guys make their name. But I don't know. It didn't really look like TNA put their biggest foot forward on Bound for Glory, but there was a lot of stories out there saying that Bound for Glory really wasn't one of the Bound for Glory wasn't one of the biggest things on their plate right now. They're looking for a TV deal. They want to make TV good, and that's just about it. Pay-per-view money coming in wasn't something that they needed to worry about. But then again, the rumor that's out there is that Bound for Glory didn't even do 10,000 buys. It's funny. I was reading a stat about WCW and about how they closed. WCW, a lot of people said was horrible and nobody watched it. WCW Sin in 2001 did 60,000 buys, and of course WCW would close a week later. The only time that TNA ever passed 60,000 buys is they had a Joe versus Angle match. They did 70,000 buys. I believe that was the Genesis show, the first time they matched up. I could be a little bit wrong on which show that was, but that was the only time they ever passed 60,000. TNA as a company probably would be going a whole lot stronger if they would have been doing, 50,000 buys, religiously across the board. But they just can't get people to watch their TV and they want to pay for more. People will go to Spike TV and they will watch it, but they just don't see the urge on why they have to throw down $50 a month to keep up to date on what's going down when you're going to see those matches, or you're going to see highlights first thing Impact on Wednesday nights now. I've been really enjoying these smaller Cokes. At my work, I always sort of see these. These are 7.5 ounce cans. I thought they were about half the size of a normal can. Normal can, of course, 12 ounces, 7.5 ounces. This last weekend at work, I really fell in love with these things. Basically, it's enough to get two big drinks out of. And then you can throw the can away. So many times you open a regular can, you're working, you're moving around, you put the can on the left side of your work, and you end up having your work on the right side. Your can's over there, and by the time your shift's over, you forget you even left the can of Coke out, and it goes to waste. But drink a Coke for the working man. From there we'll go. That's a perfect segue getting into the Stone Cold Steve Austin rumor that was sort of shut down. Stone Cold Steve Austin had a Q&A where he was able to take live calls, and I was lucky enough to be able to get in on that show. I wish that it was the call that basically was picked up by all of the wrestling news sources out there around the place. But basically, somebody got the balls to call in and ask Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's lots of rumors out there online about you getting into shape, trying to get back into the ring and see if you can get a WWE return for one more big match. Maybe help somebody out, maybe help the company out, maybe just put some money in your back pocket. And Stone Cold Steve Austin knew exactly where this rumor was coming from. Stone Cold Steve Austin, he had a guest on there, and he just was talking to his guest about how he was trying to get into shape. Basically, he works out in a gym at nighttime. He knows the owner. He's got a key, and he just sort of on this, promise keeper sort of thing where he just goes in. He opens the door. Him and Hershey, the Wonder Dog, they go in and they work out. And he wants to get back in shape to the place he wants to be, where he can be sort of looked at in a good light by walking into Gold's Gym. And that was the comeback that he was talking about. He wanted to make a comeback into working in Gold's Gym. Of course, Gold's Gym is made famous by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Hulk Hogan, back in the 80s, getting the big, huge guns. And maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin just didn't think that he was going to be taken seriously walking in there. I do know that when you listen to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, and he does talk about his foreseeable future, about how he just thinks he's a little bit too old and he's out of shape, and he doesn't really see the reason to get in there and maybe tarnish his image. This is something that we talked about before WrestleMania 30 a lot, because a lot of people were thinking he'd come in, maybe have a match with CM Punk. Was that there's more for Stone Cold Steve Austin to lose than there is for him to gain by having one more match at WrestleMania. What if he gets in there and he's not able to do what he once does? Now he goes out of his career on a downlight. I know that when you look at WrestleMania 19, it's maybe not one of the best Stone Cold Steve Austin matches of all time against him and The Rock. If you watch the Mania documentary, you see the things that led up to that match. Basically, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he almost, I don't know what was wrong with him. He said he's dehydrated. To me, it almost looked like this guy had a stroke, where basically he got sent into the emergency room. They had to call for an ambulance for him to come pick him up. He's talked about this on his podcast, basically, where he was in his room and he could barely move. He had to call for somebody's help to come into his room to call 911 for somebody to come down to him. They said that he was just too dehydrated from drinking too many energy drinks and too many beers, and he wasn't, in shape to be able to wrestle. He says they pumped him full of some I don't know what the hell he had, an IV full of something, and he got him into where he can go out there and he can have the match. The match that was secretly supposed to be Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match, of course, with Vince McMahon, taking his company and going public with it. If he was to lose Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 19, that would have been a big blow to the company. The Rock was already halfway out the door making movies at the time. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was one of the biggest stars that he's ever had in the history. Hulk Hogan at that point probably people thought was too old to come back. And if WrestleMania 19, Hogan would have been there, but he's on the way out the door as well. He's having the match with Vince McMahon, which would then turn into Hogan having to wrestle as Mr. America, and then basically him and Vince have a fallout, and I think Hogan leaves for a few years after that. But I don't know. Stone Cold is that one guy I'm always gonna hold on to. I know Stone Cold Steve Austin is I think he's in his 50s. I don't think he's like nearing 60, but the dude's not what he once was. He hasn't been in the ring for 12 years. If Stone Cold Steve Austin even does sort of like the DDP appearance, where DDP says that when he does the indies, he does three things. He does his entrance, he does his he does his entrance, he does his promo, and he does a diamond cutter. That's it. No wrestling, no matches, nothing else. Those are the three things people remember, and that's the three things people pay to see. If Stone Cold Steve Austin would just show up on Monday Night Raw, just here or there along the way, maybe one appearance a year, maybe two if I'm begging for it. That's the thing that I'm going to be happy for. Even if he has to do basically what The Rock did with Rusev, just show up, involve himself in a segment that he really has nothing to do with. Just run his mouth, hit somebody with a few punches and a stunner. I'm good to go. He can do this on, I don't know why I'm going to throw out the name Eugene. He just got fired from the company as a trainer. But, anybody, Zack Ryder, I don't care. Anything is going to help give us that sort of, something to hold on to. Stone Cold Steve Austin did say that if he did come back into wrestling, the only thing that he could see himself doing is wrestling Brock Lesnar. If he did wrestle Brock Lesnar, basically it would be, Brock Lesnar looking up at the lights to end that match. I don't think that's really what would happen if these guys did get into the ring. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't love Stone Cold hitting Brock Lesnar with a big old Stone Cold stunner. I think that would be one of the most earth-shaking things that could happen in the history of a WrestleMania if he was to do that. But we'll have to see. Stone Cold says he's not coming back to wrestle. He did say that he had some secret, sort of thing that was going to be popping up for him come February that he wasn't able to get into. Who knows? Maybe he's kayfabing us, and maybe this thing that's going to pop up in February is going to be him coming back to WWE. Maybe he's just trying to keep the story on the down low for the next little bit, and maybe we will get the one thing that we've been looking for. Something that I've been looking for on Monday Night Raw as of late is when Ryback is coming back. I just read a story today about Ryback being, basically ready to return, and Ryback just sort of waiting for the people at bay. I guess you can say the creative team at WWE, basically for him something to do on the show. He just hasn't been written in yet. At the end of August, Ryback had to go in and get surgery. I didn't even really know what the surgery was. I just figured that, they were going to go in and they were going to do a whole bunch of work on this guy. Last time Ryback was out was when he was a member of the Nexus, as still as Skip Sheffield. He broke his ankle, and Skip Sheffield didn't return to wrestling for close to 2 years after that from an ankle break. So I thought that with Ryback, I thought anything was sort of out there to happen, but it seems that he's already ready to go. It says that he went in and he had his groin worked on, where he had just a massive groin pull. He had a couple of the hernias, which has been keeping Roman Reigns out, and he's back at 100%, and he's just sort of waiting for what's going to go down. Ryback is the guy that has always had Vince McMahon's special attention, thinking that he's going to be a guy. Of course, you can look at WrestleMania 29. Ryback loses to Mark Henry in a big surprise to a whole bunch of people. It's almost like one of those matches that every once in a while Vince will say, I'm going to have this guy lose just because nobody's going to see it coming. Ryback wrestling in his first WrestleMania, losing to Mark Henry made no sense to me. And of course, months after that, Ryback would come out, turned heel on John Cena, setting himself up for a WWE Championship shot, which made sense. And I mean, like, if you look in the past, Bobby Lashley was a big time babyface, and he wanted a shot at the championship, and he went up against Cena because Cena was the biggest dog in the yard at the time, and Lashley pretty much almost turned heel on the run to those matches. And when they were done, he just jumped back into being babyface Bobby Lashley, and I thought that's what they would do with Ryback. But from there, he went into this sort of a deal with Paul Heyman, being a Paul Heyman guy, going up against CM Punk. Of course, they had the rematch. They did it 2 years in a row with Hell in the Cell. Once when he's basically switching. One time they were babyface and heel, the next time they were heel and babyface. and that sort of played into the story as well, as CM Punk was trying to get his hands on Paul Heyman for turning on him and costing him the match at Money in the Bank, just because Paul Heyman was told to stay out of CM Punk's way. He didn't need him out there at ringside anymore after the Payback show. He was going off in a new direction, and basically CM Punk didn't want to be a bad guy anymore. Ryback, to me, honestly, he got put into the tag team with Ryback, where honestly, in wrestling, sort of what makes sense to me is they should have been baby faces. They were mad at Paul Heyman dumping the pair of them to go off and manage Brock Lesnar, that they stayed heels and were a team together despite Paul Heyman, when they should have became babyface tag team that was going out and trying to beat Brock Lesnar, or at least trying to get their shot at Paul Heyman. And instead they just carried on their evil ways without them. They got put in the WrestleMania 30 pre-show as a tag team to go after the titles. They had a feud with Stardust and Goldust for a little bit, and that's really all they've done in the last year. So if Ryback comes back and he does get a big singles push, which I think a lot of people are really going for, I'm all for it. Keep him away from Curtis Axel. Curtis Axel, get him out there as a singles guy. Ever since Ryback sort of broke up with the injury, I haven't seen him as much. I thought that he'd be at least doing jobs on Raw or SmackDown, but they've been keeping him off. Just don't have these guys go in there as a team anymore. I don't want to see them fight each other or anything like that. Just go their separate ways, act like it never happened, and see what we can do. I hate to end this show on a sad note, but basically the saddest news that come out of this week is probably one of the biggest news that a lot of people's talking about. Is it's almost news that I don't even want to believe, was that Daniel Bryan is not going to be getting his return date of the Royal Rumble as thought. Basically, if you go back to August, it was around SummerSlam time. The talk of the town was that Daniel Bryan was going to be getting Tommy John surgery. Tommy John is basically where they take a ligament out of your ass and they put it in your arm, and that was going to help him regain arm strength that he lost after his neck surgery that took him out after WrestleMania 30 that ended his WWE Championship run. Something that he'd been working so hard on since he came into the WWE in 2010 to finally reach the top of the mountain at WrestleMania 30, beating Batista, Triple H, and Randy Orton all in the same night. And he went on. He had the small feud with Kane, which was supposed to keep going. That was supposed to lead to a oh man, what kind of a match were they gonna have? I can't remember. It was gonna be good though. I can tell you that much. I was really surprised when they came out and said with that stipulation that next match. And of course, they did the Extreme Rules match. That was where Bryan, hit Kane, and Kane went through the flaming table, and then they were going to come back and do something crazy. And they took it off the one show because he was hurt, but thought he would be able to wrestle the next, so they sort of announced it for that one. But man. It just sucks because in August he was going to go in and he was going to have this surgery, but the doctors came out. The doctors said, "Hey, Bryan, I don't think you need this surgery. I think you're going to be all right. Let's just have you rest up, do a little bit of rehab." But now they're saying that it's not getting better. Basically you should have done the surgery before. That was what Bryan wanted to do, but he sort of listened to the doctor's advice, and doctors aren't always 100% right all the time. Daniel Bryan is one of the biggest stars in WWE. And every moment that he's gone, I'm sure he or anybody else in the world has to wonder, just like a lot of wrestlers do. When you watch a lot of shooting reviews, when wrestlers talk about getting injured, they want to come back sooner than later. I was reading about John Morrison. He had an interview that was out there that I read, basically because he's going to be getting a spot on that new Lucha show that's going to be starting on the El Mar network. And he talked about the 2011 injury that he received, where he hurt his neck, and basically Triple H, Vince McMahon, and some other powers to be basically talked John Morrison to coming in sooner than later, basically saying that he was ready enough to come back. When it's John Morrison's body, he's the guy who should be making up his mind about when he's coming back and when he's going to be wrestling. And of course, Morrison came back and he wrestled for maybe 2 months, and you could really tell by his matches he wasn't doing the same things that he had done before because he wasn't 100% back inside of his skin. He still felt hurt, and he didn't really feel 100% safe working inside of the ring. But Bryan's got to be wondering, are people going to remember the huge run that he had from the Royal? Even it was longer than that, but I mean, basically, it blew up 100 times bigger than it was before at the Royal Rumble. At the Royal Rumble, fans that have been noticing him were definitely able to convince other fans that hadn't been noticing what was going on with Daniel Bryan. Basically, this guy was beating almost everyone that was in his way, and the guys that he wasn't beating, there were reasons in his way that he wasn't able to do it. They ran the awesome storyline of Daniel Bryan not getting a number because Triple H felt that he was protecting him by not putting him in the Rumble because he had already wrestled earlier in the night. When you can look at the card for the Royal Rumble, and there was guys that worked twice on there. So why would he not put Daniel Bryan, one of the guys that people were yelling and screaming and cheering for along the way? When number 30 came out came Rey Mysterio running on down to the ring, and everybody just heart sank to the bottom. They knew that Batista was going to win, something that I think a lot of people knew was going to happen before the show even started. But people like me, I was watching that show and I was just holding on hope that, please have Bryan win, because it is the one thing that I think makes more sense than anything out there in the world. But Bryan goes on. He made my WrestleMania 30. That's a moment that I'll never forget in my life. It made up for him getting cashed in on at the SummerSlam show I was at. And it just sucks. I mean, he held the title for a month. Well, he got to hold it for a little bit longer, but he wasn't defending it anymore. Before finally they ran a storyline, and then they just got to the point where they knew he wasn't going to be able to get better, so they just took it off of him on Monday Night Raw. And hopefully he went off and did everything. If you just think about the roller coaster ride that Daniel Bryan's been on in this 1 year, where basically he gets to the top of the mountain, the thing that he's been working for forever, to become WWE champion, something that I'm sure that even in his career he's thought to himself is something that's never going to happen. He's never going to get there. This is the same company that brought him in, made him go through NXT. He does the big Nexus reveal, fires his ass right there on Monday Night Raw to bring him back at SummerSlam. From SummerSlam, he goes on, he wins the United States Championship for The Miz, which is sort of climbing up the mountain, and then he went on that sort of just year where he just didn't do anything before winning Money in the Bank. Even when he had the Money in the Bank briefcase, he just wasn't going anywhere. Out of the middle of nowhere, cashes in on Big Show, becomes the champion, goes to WrestleMania, nosedive. 18-second match, gets kicked in the face by Sheamus, loses it, and then just that roller coaster just kept creeping up. I mean, it wasn't on the steepest climb in the world. We've seen other guys and it was constant to the point where he got to the top of that mountain. And of course, from there, he wins the championship. I believe that the order is he gets married to Brie. He takes a week off. He comes back. His dad died on Monday, so he had to basically hot shot an angle where he leaves Raw to get to his father's funeral, and he comes back, and we find out that he's hurt. I mean, it's just all over the place. It's just crazy. I really feel for him. I mean, he's one of my favorite guys that's out there. It's definitely the year of 2014 for Daniel Bryan is one that's going to go down. I mean, he honestly could write a book, or they can make a documentary DVD about what's been going down. But your heart has to go out to Daniel Bryan. Let's get this guy back as soon as possible. They're saying that he's going to have this Tommy John surgery. I don't know how it doesn't really make sense to me how it's going to be doing. Some people say that there's a 6 to 12 month return on when he'd be able to come back, but that sort of strikes out Royal Rumble. But there's people holding their fingers, maybe crossing their fingers, saying that he'll be able to work WrestleMania 31. But according to my math, if he has that surgery today, he has it and he comes back in April. The only problem is that WrestleMania is in March. So I'm not 100% sure how they're getting him back in that time. But I don't know, man. It sucks. I feel for him. I thank everybody for listening to the STS Radio this week. We'll be back next